Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for being here with Spirit Matters, your daily spiritual check-in. My name is Dal Granga, and I'm here with Paris Stu this morning. How you doing, Paris Stu?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Just caught some sun, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice out though. I actually had a day where I was looking at my phone the whole time I was walking around outside. So I'm going to confess I was that person today.
You were looking at your phone. Were you stopping traffic and bumping into
I
people?
don't know. No, it wasn't that bad, but I was like moving, I was just like writing emails and walking because I just felt like I needed to get out of the house.
Yeah, I
That's
do that a
that's
lot
where
too.
I'm at. Really? I was just like, I can't sit here and just like write emails. I'm gonna go for a walk and write emails.
I'm gonna walk and write emails.
That's right.
You need that sometimes, especially in New York. You just got to get out and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful outside now. The weather's warming up, at least here in the city this week. Today's going to be warm. It's like wonderful. So it's good to get out.
It is. Yeah. How are
Wonderful,
you
wonderful.
today?
What's that?
How are you today?
I'm doing okay. I'm here. I made it. I made it to another day, and that's always a good thing. Today's Thursday, so after our podcast, I go into New York City, go to the Bhakti Center. We have our Thursday night kirtan tonight, and that's always a beautiful experience. And it's the last week before Rath Yatra, which is the big festival of chariots here in the city. So Radhanath Swami should be coming to New York next week, and a lot of people are going to be coming into town. And it becomes a busy week with lots of guests, lots of people, lots of events and things happening. And so gearing up for all of that.
You do such a great job with the kirtan, um, hosting it and just making everyone feel so warm and welcome. And I just love how you do that, Dayal. You've been blessed in many ways, and you're really doing some beautiful service. So.
I hope so. I hope so. I usually don't think that about myself, but it's good to get that encouragement, whether you're telling the truth or just trying to bolster my confidence. I appreciate it either way. I try to invite guests. I try to invite guests on the show that I know will say good things about me.
No, it's actually true.
One
And
time I invited a guest, all they did was criticize me, and I never invited them back.
I don't believe you.
So I pulled up this verse that we were reading yesterday, and there's another verse that we were reading from yesterday, pulling up. I don't always remember the exact points where we left off, but there was this beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam that you read yesterday that says devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. We were talking a little bit about the importance of having our own direct experiences in spiritual life, and that faith isn't just something that we convince ourselves to believe of, but it's based off of our lived experience. Faith isn't even something that's necessarily a spiritual concept. We have faith all the time in material things. I have faith that the sun is going to come up in the morning. I have faith that when I enter an intersection on a green light, that other people are going to stop at their red light. I have faith that if I put my dollar in the vending machine, the Snickers bar is going to come out when I push B17. And we have faith in all of these things because it's our lived experience over the course of time that we build a trust,
Yeah.
that we build a trust that I've seen something enough times that I believe it will happen again, even though I have no proof or way of guaranteeing that it will, but I have a certain faith, and that's how I live my life. And I think our spiritual faith is developed when we not just believe what somebody tells us to, but we believe because we have entered into the laboratory ourselves and have a lived experience. And it's important for us to continue making sure that we are not just going along with emotions in spiritual life, but that we're carving out time and space and asking the right questions and evaluating and assessing. And you were talking yesterday about journaling when we read, journaling when we read about how it applies to me and making sure that I'm absorbing. And it's not about reading, a certain number of pages every day and memorizing things. But even if I just read one word or a sentence or phrase, and I take the time to understand and assess how it applies in my life, it's important for me to have those experiences. And so you've been bringing that to life for us, and I really appreciate that. And that's where we were, right? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, as I was listening, I was just thinking about how, as we look at examples of people who are actually getting that nourishment in spiritual life, like we see some of the teachers that we know, and they're walking in the world, and how they're chanting and how they're acting and how they're engaging with everybody. It's like, oh, there's a sense, like a deep experience that creates this conviction in us. It's like, oh, this is real. This is possible. And I'm seeing it in other people. Like I'm seeing how it's showing up for others. So that also helps us to build the confidence. And then as I was listening to you, one other thing that came to mind was just how we make the unconscious conscious through, or maybe the subconscious or the semi-conscious more conscious through the act of journaling. And it's almost a way of like remembering, because often we forget. And I feel like that's such a theme of like, oh, we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten our true identity as a spirit soul. And we just like constantly need these reminders because the material energy is so intense, or yeah, it can be very intense.
Hmm. Sadhana, in a lot of ways, spiritual practice is simply a process of deep reminders because we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten our spiritual essence. And material living is basically doing the things that cast me into further forgetfulness. It's contributing to the lie of who I am not, and covering up the layers of thinking that I'm somebody else other than an eternal spirit soul. And sadhana is those practices where it kind of, it's when you've got amnesia, you got to go to the places that you used to spend time in. You got to do the things you used to do and spend time with the people that you were friends with in order to kind of jog your memory and be like, oh yeah, this is who I am. And it feels foreign at first because it's like, I don't remember anything, and this doesn't feel like anything, and I don't relate or connect to any of this, or you, or who are you, Barbara? um but I continue to do the spiritual activities, and it kind of jogs that spiritual memory, like, oh yes, I am an eternal spirit soul connected to divine supreme source. And we start to remember.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess what's also coming to mind, how there's that verse in the Gita that talks about the different types of material covering, like it's like a smoke covering fire or a baby.
Yeah, in the third chapter.
It's interesting how I don't know what verse that is, but
At the
I
end
just
of the third chapter, he says, as fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust or kama.
yeah, and it's I think what I initially thought when I read this verse, maybe the first time, I was like, lust, I was thinking only about like maybe a sexual type of lust, but in fact it's like anything that we're really attached to, or we're like, this has to happen, or it's got to be like this. That's the lust that's being brought forward here. And yeah, it's just interesting to think about how my intense desire that's like beyond, it's not just my desire for my connection with Krishna or my supreme divinity, or like the musk deer, I already am. I'm connected, like the supreme Paramatma is in my heart actually, but more, oh wait, I'm forgetting that I'm connected to that, and then I'm like this thing or that or this person or this, like whatever it is external to me that's like pulling, and it creates these different types of coverings. And it's sobering to think that, yeah, how our vision can be clouded. And I guess that ties back to what we were talking about yesterday around like, what am I not seeing? And sometimes it's like, though desire is like necessary in a spiritual sense, for progress, excessive material desire can really throw us.
Mm. Was there a time in your life that you feel comfortable sharing about something that you weren't seeing, that you became aware of, that you made the decision to open yourself up to see it and embrace that area of growth?
Okay. Well, since you're asking,
I'm asking.
you're asking. So I went on this holy name immersion the last few weeks, and or sorry, like 2 weeks ago, and in New Vrindavan. It was really special. And to really just sum it up, I think I had some my own attachments where I was like, it's got to work out this way, and then I've got to do this, and then I've got to move here, and then it's going to be like this. And I had all this like story around how my life has to turn out next. And I really prayed that, like, what is your will, Krishna? Because I think maybe I'm getting very attached to my will and how I think it needs to turn out. And so I'm still in this process, Dayal, of like, what is the next step? But I really prayed. And I think what emerged for me was like, how can I release this attachment that it's got to work out this way, and be more open to like what's supposed to emerge, instead of like, it's got to work out like this, and then this happens, and then this, like, all the
Yeah.
criteria. How about so that's just something, but how about for you, Dayal?
I feel like you're just turning it back on me. You're like, yeah, there was a couple things. I thought life was supposed to go a certain way and it didn't. And I just thought maybe, yeah. What about you? What are your big, giant ego uncoverings and things that you need to see about yourself? Because I got a list of things I'd love to point out if you're open to it. What about you? I'm asking the questions here. You're the one that's supposed to spill the guts and get vulnerable. I'm the host here. I got immunity. Immunity to all the vulnerability. Host means immunity to vulnerability. I got all kinds of stuff. I got all kinds of stuff. I think there's always things that life is offering us to see about ourselves. And I think spiritually we have the opportunity to see how specifically God is giving them to us as a gift. Because we can just grow for the sake of growing, or we can grow knowing that I'm trying to position myself to love Krishna better and to receive God's love better. Because really, I was just listening yesterday. Somebody sent me a clip of a podcast where they were asking the question, what are you hiding? And when we overconsume, whether it's with drugs or alcohol or food or social media or news or work or general busyness or whatever it might be. There's a sense of trying to put a cover over something that we don't want to look at, that we're uncomfortable to sit through and to notice, whether it's a pain or an emotion or something about ourselves, and it's unconscious and it's subtle. And that what happens is we discover things about ourselves through subtraction when we simplify our lives. But it's hard to simplify, because then we're just left with ourselves, or we're left with the things. It's when we look at relationships and you think about being on your phone, and when you're sitting at dinner with somebody, or even gossip. What is gossip? One time, our mutual friend Vrindavan Vinodini, she talked about gossip in a class, and she defined it. I think she just looked at the definition as simply talking about somebody else when they're not present. So we're gossiping about her right now. But and in the context of it, when you're gossiping with somebody else, there's the underlying premise is that there's nothing interesting enough about us as we are right now that we can discuss. We need to talk about somebody else who's not here, as opposed to I don't have an interest enough in what's going on in your life or my life, or a comfortableness talking about what's going on in my life or your life, that we need to talk about something other than what's just, being present right here with us, how we're doing. And so I think that, trying to reel it back to how I got there.
Well, I think you were talking about
How about you, Paris? Stu? What are the things that you don't want to see about yourself?
yeah. What else?
No. I can say, and so there's a sense in which we want to open ourselves up to be more loving individuals and to receive love and to reflect God's love in the world. And so I think that there's been a couple of times, big instances. One was definitely when I got married, and over the course of 9 years of being married. And another time is when I in the various leadership positions I've had at the Bhakti Center and in my spiritual life. Right now I'm currently the executive director. And there are times when you realize all the ways in which you fall short. You realize all the ways in which you fall short, and there's a conception of yourself. You look at things, I follow certain sports because I find them entertaining, and there's a concept, the armchair quarterback, or you look at sports, and we look at things through replays and slow motions and analysts, and there's all these sports analysts that some have never played the game before in their life, and they talk about and they analyze the other players and about how it should be done. And it's so easy to look at somebody else and saying, why didn't you do that? Or you should have done that, or that was a dumb move, or blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that you have no idea what it's like to be in that specific situation, and the mental and emotional challenge that comes up with it. You would like to think that you would respond in a certain way, but when you're in it, it's a totally different story. And so sometimes you look at other people, or you imagine what you would do in a certain situation, and you have a certain conception of yourself. I would do it differently. I would perform a certain way. I'm such a great listener. I would know how to handle conflict well. I know how to communicate well. I'm a caring person. I'm a great manager. I know how to make decisions, and so you have all these conceptions, and then you realize all the ways in which your ego gets in the way of you actually being able to do that. Because a big part of your game isn't necessarily trying to love and serve another person. A big part of your game isn't trying to just do the best thing for the organization or the company or the people that you're working with. A big part of it is trying to bolster and protect your own ego, and when the ego feels under threat, things get a little weird. And so, for me, I found ways in which there were conceptions about myself, about what kind of partner I would be, what kind of leader I would be, what kind of friend I would be. And, whenever there's a conflict, it's always either the other person's fault, or if it's my fault, there's a really good reason for it, and I just got to get everybody else to understand what that reason is. And then they'll recognize that I did nothing wrong. And then just being able to realize, no, I made a mistake. No, I was acting out of ego. No, I'm not God's gift to the world, and I'm not the perfect husband or leader or even the perfect friend, but I can allow myself to see what are the things in which I need to grow, not shame myself for it, not realize that I'm getting ejected for it, but that actually I'm flawed, and that I have ways in which I need to grow, and I need Krishna's love and light to flood into my life. And so it's a constant growing process.
Thank you for sharing that. Look, I'm also, I've had many situations, not just the one from this last week that I'm still going through, but also this idea of like, when I've been in a hard position in my life, do I blame other people? Or am I looking at like, what did I do wrong? Right. And sometimes it feels right for the ego. It's so easy to just blame others, but that's like the ego's quality versus the soul's quality, which is how can I serve? What am I grateful for? It's like seeing the other soul versus like, you didn't do this. And it's such a difference in consciousness, right? Like, and it's hard because it's like, that's where the rubber meets the road. And it's also, just hearing you share about that, it's like when I'm really caught up in the ego, then it's even harder to see. So it's like, I don't even, versus like, I think when there's more of the soul consciousness, there's more of this like, oh yeah, I made a mistake. I can even laugh at myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's difference and just that attachment to what I did versus like, oh, look at me again, like almost just like a softness and
Well,
acceptance.
yeah, and I think that's a really, really beautiful way, a beautiful perspective and element to bring in, because I think that if the conception of myself is that I have to build a certain material identity, then all of those shortcomings feel like a failure. But if the conception is that I'm actually trying to come closer to my true eternal self, then all of those seeming shortcomings and failures are actually a step forward, because I'm learning about the things that are getting in the way of me coming closer to that eternal true self. And so, and I think that might be a little bit what Krishna alludes to when he talks about in the second chapter of the Gita, that there is no loss or diminution on this path. And in some ways, there is no spiritual failure, because every step that we take closer to Krishna is to our eternal benefit. And so even when I'm seeing the cracks of my ego, the cracks of my ego are actually the places where my soul is getting exposed and uncovered, which is a
Mm,
beautiful thing. And we should lean into that.
yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Parastu. We've come to our time today. Would love to get some takeaways from Kimberly, who's our Wrap It Up Acharya here for the show. She's going to share some takeaways with us, and then we're going to share our own closing words as we peruse all the chats blown up over here in our chat about people sharing quotes, and we always appreciate people sharing. But what you got for us, Kimberly?
All right. We're taking away that we are in spiritual amnesia, that sadhana is a process of deep reminders of our spiritual essence, to release attachment of things working out a certain way, leaving it up to Krishna's will. We discover aspects of ourselves through subtraction, and that failures can be a step forward to come closer to our eternal true self. Thanks, Taya and Parastu.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Parastu, what are you walking away with today?
Just trying to like process. There was so much that was so good. And sometimes I just say the last thing that comes to mind versus like what was the biggest thing. So I feel like I need a minute. I need a minute.
You
You're
need
like,
a minute.
a minute.
I'm processing.
You're like, come on, quick. No.
Quick, say something deep and meaningful.
Yeah, we want you to say
The
it
timer is on. I
fast.
got my sand timer turned here. You are running out of time.
Um,
The credits are going to be rolling soon.
yeah, I think this distinction of knowing whether I'm acting out of the ego or from the spirit. And the spirit is always looking to serve. The spirit is humble, the soul is humble, is focused on is actually grateful. Whereas the ego is like, they're wrong. They messed up. That's their fault. You shouldn't have. And there's such a different tone. And if I can just like gauge where my consciousness is at any moment, like there's a opening, right? And like you said, where the light comes out, the soul can actually just emerge, because the ego is very calcified, it feels, and very difficult to it feels difficult, but I really believe that, like, I feel like this is a theme that's come up since yesterday as well. Just when we're really connected to truth, like all the untruth just falls away. It becomes irrelevant or just not as prominent.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just walking away and appreciating that I don't have to, just letting go of the idea of just defending, you know, just letting go of the idea that I've got to defend myself and that it's okay. And that if my ego's feeling attacked or triggered, that I can just let that process take place. And rather, it's like kind of like sometimes if you like get like, if you ever got like a massage and it gets really tense, you know, but the action is like you can actually just relax and let it work through that tense spot, you know? Like you don't have to tense up as a resistance. Like really it's best to just let your muscle relax and then let it just work through that tension that's there. And so the tension's coming up with the ego getting triggered. And it's like, I can actually soften and let it go because I don't have to defend my ego. I can welcome and invite a discovering of what's underneath it. So that's a good thing for me to remember and keep in mind. And I'm going to do that today. And so thank you so much. Thank you, Peristu, so very, very much. Thank
I
you for all
love
our,
that so much. The softening,
yeah,
and the massage metaphor is really helpful because that
yeah.
is the real thing. You just got to let go and allow. And
Everybody go get a massage today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Peristu. Thank you for all our live listeners. And thank you for you tuning in wherever you are from. Really grateful for you and glad that you're tuning in with us. Thank you all so much. Today is Thursday. We got one more day this week. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care, everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.